This Health Ranger Report Pandemic Podcast is brought to you by NaturalNews.com for uncensored reporting and HealthRangerStore.com for lab-tested preparedness supplies such as storable food, full-face medical masks, biostructured silver first aid gel, and iodine, only while supplies last. Most humans are very good at convincing themselves that they are rational, intelligent, informed individuals when they're actually driven by irrational emotions in most of their decision making. For example, when it comes to advertising, if you query people who watch television and you ask them, are you influenced by those TV ads? And they say, oh, no, of course not. I make my own decisions. But then if you look at the statistics of their purchasing behavior, they are influenced by the TV ads, which is, of course, the reason why beer companies and laundry detergent companies and drug companies run the ads, because the ads alter consumer behavior. Otherwise, there would be no point in running the ads. So people delude themselves into thinking that they aren't influenced by these things or that they're logical and rational when, in fact, they aren't. Now, when it comes to this coronavirus pandemic, the same thing is true. You can show people the math, the numbers, the compounded exponential growth of the number of infections. You can explain how viruses work and how aerosolized transmission works and so on. But none of that matters if they don't feel like it's going to be much of a problem. So I hear people saying things like, oh, I just don't feel like it's going to be that bad. Really? You don't feel like it's going to be that bad. No, it's not really. I don't feel like it's really going to get to us. Oh, okay. Because that's an entirely irrational point of view, because the math of the situation, the biology of the situation, the transmissivity of the virus, it doesn't care how you feel. Your emotions are not part of that equation. But that's the way people make decisions. They're just completely irrational, which is why they won't prepare. We have a Professor Leung in Hong Kong that is now warning that if this virus is uncontained, it could infect 60 to 80% of the world population. So let's do the math on this and see how it makes you feel. The math on this. Okay, let's be real conservative. So let's take the lower number, 60% of the world population. Of course, the world population is over 7 billion people, but we'll just go with the lower number, 7 billion. So 7 billion times 60% is 4.2 billion people, right? That's how many would be infected. Now, out of 4.2 billion people infected, some number will die. Now, that death rate is anywhere from 2% if you believe China to 15% if you believe the actual science coming out. But let's just say it was, well, let's start with 10% and we'll use some lower numbers. So 10% of 4.2 billion is 420 million, which means that if it's a 5% death rate, half of that would be 210 million people dead. Now, okay, suppose you think it's only a 2% death rate. So 2% times 4.2 billion is what, 84 million. So 84 million people would die if that scenario unfolded. And if you believe China's numbers, which we know are lies, 80 million people, over 80 million. So anyway, the point is that there's a lot of people's lives could be taken by this virus. And yet the average person out there talking about this says, well, I just don't feel it's going to be that big of a problem. And if you were to ask them, well, okay, on what basis do you have that feeling? What's the basis for that feeling? They say, well, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's going to be that bad. And you repeat the question. Okay, on what basis do you have that feeling that it's not going to be that bad? And it just goes in circles. They say, well, I think the government's probably going to have it under control. You ask them, okay, on what basis do you think the government has this under control? What evidence do you have that the government has this under control? And they say, well, the CDC is trying to clamp down on it, and the CDC is doing a good job. And then you point out, well, the CDC just admitted they accidentally allowed a quarantine person to leave quarantine ahead of time because of a lab mix-up that apparently the lab flagged them as positive for the coronavirus, but they thought it was negative, so they released the person back into the public, and the person went home, and then the CDC called them and said, we made a mistake, please come back to the quarantine after you've been, of course, interacting with all the public at that point. So the person goes back into the quarantine, which makes a mockery of the whole point of a quarantine, which is to isolate infected people from the rest of the public. But apparently the CDC thinks you can just release people to the public and then recall them back to the quarantine and everything's okay. Like there's a giant cosmic undo button. And you point that out to people and you get an answer like, well, I haven't heard that. Well, I just told you that. So now you have heard it. Well, I haven't seen it on CNN. Well, CNN's lying to you. You see what I mean? It just goes in circles, these endless circles. People aren't rational. And by the way, that information that I just told you is from the CDC spokesperson who just admitted all of that, by the way. So I'm not making that up. That's actually what the CDC just announced. But most people aren't aware of it because they're completely isolated from real news and real information. So they don't even have the information from which they could make an informed decision. So they rely on emotions. And a lot of them rely on herd behavior. Like, well, when my neighbor gets worried, then I'll be worried. Well, what if your neighbor is isolated from information as well? What if your neighbor is ignorant of the real situation? Then why you're relying on your neighbor? It just goes on and on. Look, most people make decisions based on herd mentality. They follow the herd. It's something that's built in to the neurology of many humans. I've noticed this in goats. I have goats. They are Nigerian dwarf goats. And goats have a herd mentality because goats are usually eaten by other predators. So if you're a goat, there is defense in numbers, where if a predator is after you, perhaps that predator won't get to you. Maybe the predator will eat your cousin first, and you might survive if you're a goat. So goats tend to just follow the herd. And when they get separated from the herd, they start to scream out. It makes them very nervous when they get separated from the herd. They have to be part of the group. It's a group behavior. The group goes everywhere and they stick together. And you find that it's very common among creatures who are typically hunted by predators. But many humans act like goats or sheep, which is why we call them sheeple. They have a sheeple mentality, which is a herd mentality that they're incapable of thinking for themselves. So they just follow the herd, even if that herd is marching off a cliff, or even if the herd is totally uninformed, scientifically illiterate, just ignorant of the facts, whatever. They're going to follow that herd because they think there's safety with the herd. I'm here to tell you there isn't any safety with the herd because the herd is made up of morons. The herd is completely uninformed about the reality of this situation. Following the herd may get you killed. In fact, if the herd is running off a cliff, you need to fight against the herd, escape the herd, and go in the other direction because they are a suicide herd. And I've sometimes called humanity a suicide cult, but you could also call it a suicide herd. When it comes to things like this pandemic, when you've got literally across the planet probably billions of people right now that are saying, what pandemic? What are you talking about? There's nothing. There's no big problem. Then you know you're dealing with a suicidal herd. It's almost as if NASA were to announce that, there's a 100-mile wide asteroid hurtling toward Earth. It's going to slam into the planet, probably North America, at a relative velocity of, 30,000 kilometers a second, or some insanely high velocity like that. The average person would say, I don't feel like it's going to be that bad. Why? Because they're not logical. They don't understand that kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times velocity squared. And so when you square the velocity times the mass of the asteroid, and then you calculate the impact into the Earth and the amount of particulate matter that would be injected into the atmosphere and the number of years that the sun would be blocked, collapsing the food supply and ending human civilization, none of those thoughts occur to the average sheeple. They just say, I don't feel it's going to be that bad, and continue drinking their latte and going back to their, football games or whatever they're into, because they cannot think for themselves. So they follow the herd. They're incapable somehow. I've never understood this, but they're incapable of thinking even 1 or 2 steps ahead, like cause and effect. Okay, what's going to happen if this happens? So on the virus, what's going to happen if the coronavirus breaks containment? So for example, let's say if this virus, which most people believe is only spreading in China, let me give you a fictional scenario. Suppose there were over 460 infections outside of China involving 24 different nations. At that point, would you think that has broken containment and has begun replicating outside of China? And most people, the answer would be, well, yeah, of course, but that hasn't happened yet. Well, guess what? Those are today's statistics. There are over 460 infections outside of China involving 24 nations. So what I told you was fiction is actually today's statistics. And we know those statistics are underreported. So you know that this has already broken containment in China. It's replicating outside that country, and it's essentially uncontained. So that's the situation we're in. But again, most people, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. I'm going to get my pension check. And what do you even say? Basically, those people are already dead because they won't prepare. They won't get informed. They probably eat a bunch of processed food, at Denny's or Golden Corral or whatever restaurants they tend to visit, a bunch of junk food. They don't have good nutrition. They don't have good health. They don't have good immune function, but they take their annual flu shot because my doctor told me so. And, by the way, I'm not making fun of actual retarded people with that voice. I'm making fun of people who are normal people who act retarded. That's what I'm making fun of, mocking them for their stupidity. And they deserve to be mocked for being so stupid that they deny the existence of this massive global pandemic that has already escaped containment in China. So yeah, I will mock those people, but not for long because many of them will actually be dead, and I won't mock them for dying. I will feel sorry for them and say a prayer for them. But while they're in the state of denial, I guess they deserve to be mocked for their stupidity. It's not a smart thing to deny the existence of a pandemic. As Charles Hugh Smith said, controlling the narrative is not the same as controlling the virus. But some people think it is. That's the way they operate. And that's not going to work very well for those people. So stay informed. Mike Adams here, the Health Ranger, NaturalNews.com. Of course, keep reading. We will keep bringing you the truth on this topic and many other topics. You can check out my videos at Brighteon.com. My channel there is HR Report. Thank you for listening. When it comes to prepping, you not only need good products that can help keep you alive, awake, aware, and nourished during difficult times, you also need products you can trust. At the Health Ranger store, we do extensive laboratory testing using an in-house lab that's ISO accredited. It's inspected, it's audited. It's a 2-year process to even get that accreditation. We use multiple mass spec instruments, state-of-the-art science. I'm a published science author as well and a patent holder on several technologies, some of which we use variations of in our lab. The purpose of this lab is to help you make sure you get clean foods, superfoods, storable foods for emergency preparedness and survival use. We have a certified organic lab-tested, what's called Ranger Bucket collection of storable foods with some survival gear in the buckets to help you even boil water and cook those foods and so on. It's a fantastic product. We can barely keep it in stock even during normal times. In a crisis, we'll be wiped out of this product because it actually takes us a lot of time to make those products. But if they're in stock, you can get them now at healthrangerstore.com/prepwithmike. In fact, go to that URL, healthrangerstore.com/prepwithmike, and you'll see some of our survival and preparedness supplies, including iodine, colloidal silver products and gel first aid products, storable foods, superfoods, medicinal herbs for first aid, and much more. We have a lot of products for you to help you be self-reliant, to be safe, to survive difficult circumstances, natural disasters, and all kinds of things. If you want to get prepared, do it with us at the Health Ranger store so that you know you're getting safe, clean, laboratory-verified preparedness foods, supplements, and other related products. Again, the URL is healthrangerstore.com/prepwithmike. All one word, no spaces. Prep with Mike. I'm Mike Adams. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. If you want to support our mission, visit us at healthrangerstore.com for the world's largest selection of lab-verified superfood and nutritional products for healthy living. It's at healthrangerstore.com.